if you wanted to completely switch careers completely and go into a completely different field, you'd be ultimately very successful, because the skill set that you've developed on this journey is transferable across the board.
G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of TRT the podcast. This is an extremely special day today. One, because it's our first podcast with an actual guest, so you're going to be able to see more than just me. I've got a guy on here that he's been my closest friend through the majority of my life, so it's very fitting that this man would be my first guest on TRT the podcast. He's a guy that's doing incredible things with horses. He's an inspiration to me and to more than over 100,000 people on his Instagram account. But it's a guy that I respect highly. It's a guy that probably knows more about my horse journey than anybody else on the planet. So today, guys, we are blessed to have a chat together with my good friend, fellow countryman, Will Rogers. Welcome to the
Great
TRT
to be
podcast.
here, man. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So it's a funny thing that, because probably a lot of people don't know how our lives have sort of intertwined, how much of them, because of course we starting in Australia and, you know, great mates from a very early stage. And yeah, we sort of followed our dreams and our paths, and we've been to different countries, and we've ended up in places together, and now we're both living in Europe, and you're in Germany, quite a distance from us, and we're terrible at catching up. We've just spoke about, which was good last night. We had a good steak and a good chance to catch up. But a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people don't know the real journey we've taken as far as where we've really come from and what we've sort of done as far as what we've achieved with horses. And yeah, people don't know that, or you know, don't really understand that, you know, what we've sort of that we know probably more about each other's horse journeys than anybody else. Would you agree with that? Like,
yeah.
Of course, we've done a lot of different things now, but
well, I think our lives have, in some weird way, have been on a similar frequency the whole way since we met, and it's strange how I'll call you up sometimes and you'll be thinking about something along the same lines as I'll be thinking, how's that possible? I could call anyone else in the world and they wouldn't be on the same frequency. And so that's just been a really special thing. And I mean, thanks for the great introduction, by the way, but you've been a huge mentor to me, and my life wouldn't have turned out the way it's turned out if I hadn't met you. So I'm incredibly grateful for all that, because through my life, meeting you was probably one of the big pivotal moments that's shifted the trajectory of my life, sort of thing. So that's I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, cheers, mate. That's also why it was important to, you know, we'd been planning this for a long time, of course, and I was going through starting the podcast and thinking, okay, what sort of guests, you know, where should you start? And of course, telling your own story. And
who's the first guinea pig to start with?
Who's the guy that's going to test if this works or not?
That's right.
So
who can we use to test the microphone?
But yeah, it was definitely, of course, because we've traveled the journey so well together, and we've done so many things and been through so many obstacles and broken so many boundaries together, that I thought that it was really important that you were the first guest.
Yeah.
And I hope that you're going to be here more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also, and I don't want to talk too much today about, you know, our life story, because I want to give something value to the people. So I want to delve into the things. Will's also a guy that he's probably the person I've had the most interesting life conversations with in my life. We often have said, you know, if only we could have recorded. We still say, we'll be driving somewhere.
There's a few podcasts who never got recorded.
No, they would have changed probably nobody's life but ours. But we often go pretty deep on a lot of things, and we're going to try to keep it a little bit audible today. But I'm just grateful that you're here, mate. And I'm happy that we have this discussion and we can share one of our conversations with people. So
absolutely.
I want to get into it. We've got a sort of few rough topics, and I want to talk also about the sort of stuff you're doing and you know, how we sort of, you know, we've traveled some pretty unique paths together.
Sure,
we both don't really go with the norm. From the get-go, of course, because of where we come from and our background and coming to the other side of the world and spending a long period of time on the other side of the world and entering spaces that is foreign, or we were the foreigners, literally in what we were doing and being from somewhere else. And I'd say one of the strongest things that we had from the very beginning was definitely our vision. You know, we're both probably, we would have said many times, a couple of dreamers, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think that's also bred into us, both from our parents and our culture. And of course, you, like me, you have wonderful parents and have supported you in everything. And you've got that really incredibly strong family unit, which I admire incredibly. But that vision, you know, in taking that unique path, we're able to achieve actually a lot of things just through the vision, you know, through believing that we could come here and be the outcast and start a business from scratch and be in another country where we didn't know the language, we didn't know the rules, we didn't know anything. And part of it was breaking the rules. But I think the big thing for us was our vision, and of course also for where we're heading now, and especially with you, with doing some unbelievable things with the team of horses and you have now, which we'll go into a little bit later. But what is it for you that's important, and what's your process for creating a vision, and what do you tell sort of guys working for you now about vision that's important, that gets them where they need to go?
It's a great question. It's a great question, because I think when we start out, I think we have an idea of what we might like to do based on wherever we're at. And it might, you know, depending on where you're at, it might be far-fetched, your idea, and you might be thinking, ooh, I'd love to do that, but I don't know if it's possible for me, you know. But as I've gone along, I've just realized that the vision you have is your guiding. It's like you're out at sea and your vision is the direction. And when you get closer to that particular vision, it might change. Your vision might change, and you might go to the right and end up somewhere completely different. That's kind of what's happened for me. But without a vision, I just don't see how it's easy to exist in the world where you get, no matter what you're doing, you're going to get bumped around, things are going to knock you sideways. And if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to get lost and turn back, or lose your way and just get blown around in the big sea. And also, the more I go along, the more I realize, like, your vision can be completely unique to yourself, can't it? Like, you don't need to do what other people think even makes sense sometimes. Like, and that's something that probably earlier on I was maybe a bit more conventional with my ideas. Now I'm sort of getting more creative and just realizing what's more uniquely my passion that I can do or live. How can I live my life that way and aim at that? Because I may as well, you know, that's what I want to do. Why not aim at that? Like, even if it seems a little crazy, all the crazy people are the ones that do those amazing things. So it's taken me a long time to realize that's possible. And I've had to shed a fair few limiting beliefs along the way to get that view. What about you? What's your experience in that?
It's funny, I always love that quote of, you can fail at doing something you don't like, so why not fail at something you know?
100%.
I think it's also, in some ways, I think about where we started out in Australia, that way back in the day,
in the old days.
In the good old days, that that it was kind of easier to, in a way, to get a vision. Like, we were kind of starved of influence compared to now.
Yes. Well, the vision could more easily be, like, clear to you. Like you say, you have and I I can remember when we were in Australia and you were telling me about going to Europe and these ideas that you had, and that just sounded so outlandish to me because I hadn't been to Europe and didn't know that the whole dressage world and the whole equestrian world over here. And I remember thinking, wow, whatever he's doing, going to do some exciting stuff over there. And now when we look back at it, some of the things that you set out to do, you've well and truly done and passed miles ago. And it seems almost funny now that was the big vision. But at that time, when you're out in some small, you're out in the countryside in Australia in the dust, that seems like a big one, doesn't
Absolutely. I remember at times when we were home at my place in Nanagoon and working a couple of horses, and we'd go in and try to search, we'd be talking, we're working with horses about, I heard this guy's doing this and that, and we'd go on the internet and download something that YouTube had just started up, and we'd have to wait 20 minutes for it to buffer.
That's right.
And then we'd get through 4.5 seconds of him doing something with a horse.
And if you showed those videos to us now, we probably wouldn't be able to sit through it. So that poor quality video and so on. Yeah.
But it is more difficult now, I think, with all the distractions and if you've got a vision and a plan. We didn't have someone intervening. We were not looking at social media or what 1,000 other people were doing and then questioning ourselves if that was really the thing we're going after. Yeah. And I think these days, even for me now, it's difficult to keep focus and be very regimented
100%.
On what I allow in, to my mind and my thoughts, and protecting my thoughts and continually having to, I remember we would set a goal of what we wanted to do, and we would work on that, for a couple of weeks solid, and we would have it down pat, and we didn't have
go out and do it.
Yeah,
that's right.
We didn't have people constantly information of how to do it better, or to look it up on YouTube. Someone else has the steps, or go to someone's online or whatever. We were just there figuring it out. And
that's such a good point. I think for a lot of people in this environment, there's that level of, when there's a lot of information, I think you become more acutely aware of, I could be doing this better. But where, how, what, there's many different options, and sometimes it's better to do it and make those mistakes and sort of not necessarily know if you're doing it the exact right way, but you've at least got some experience down and you've done something, and then you can refine it. But at least you're putting rubber to the road on what you're trying to work on. And I think the double-edged sword is that all the great information now allows you to be so much wiser, so much more in contact with higher levels of truth, and you're not so lost in the wilderness, so to speak, not the wilderness, but lost in lack of information. But then you got to process too much information, and that can cause you to get lost. So it's challenging.
Do you have moments now? I'll talk a little bit about what you're doing and your horses and stuff, but do you have many moments now like we did back then in Nanagoon, where you're just working your horses and you're able to stay very present and not sort of allow the distractions to question what you're doing, or maybe doing it better, really staying in that solid, focused, undisturbed isolation, for want of a better word? Is that important still for you?
Well, I have a very busy mind, and that can help me greatly and help me reflect and so on, but it can also be very troublesome, because I can sometimes be working with my horses and have all the traffic of everything else going through my mind, and having that feeling where I'm not as connected and as in the moment really with the task. And I know I should be, but I'm just too much in my mind. And then
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm like that all the time. Sometimes you feel like you're the only idiot. It allows you, you're meant to be this horseman that's keeping your shit together, Of course, you see what you're doing with your horses now, and that for me, I have not delved into that world at all. And I constantly, refer to you as being an inspiration in that area of liberty and building a team. And, there's not many people in the world that can do that. And I think that I always look at that and think you have to be in a monk-like state and put yourself in very focused environments and be in tune. I mean, if you're working,
Well, it's a good point. Like in some of that, like I think there's a level of when you're doing something that's you've done so much of, and it's simple enough for you now because you've done so much of it, you're unconsciously competent with what you're doing, then your brain can wander more.
Yeah.
But if you're doing something that requires more engagement, then you're just pulled into the present moment, then you're fine. I think the issue with, and I think you would agree with this very much, is we have a lot of responsibilities outside of what we're doing. And if you were to take them off my plate, I could just be there. But all that other stuff that's going on that I need to deal with and address is what gets me out of balance. And I think that's sort of the challenge of life in this era, because there are so many opportunities because of technology and all this connection that we have, but then the other part is the mental traffic gets out of hand, and then something as simple as just being in the present moment with your horse can become work because of that, can't it?
Well, it's that constant life thing of developing that, isn't it? I mean, that's so good thing about the internet and where things go on now. Like we're sharing often with each other that podcast with Ed Milet and Rob Dodrick about the system and how he's managing that, so you don't have friction and you can be in the moment when you need to.
Yeah, let's give a shout out to Ed Milet and Rob Dodrick.
Listen to that, Ed Milet and Rob Dodrick. I mean, that's some gold nuggets right there. Phenomenal. If you get nothing from this, go and watch that podcast right away.
Highly recommend that if you want to optimize your life. Yeah.
I want to then go back a little bit again. I drew out some key words. There's a lot of key words in our conversations along the way.
Oh yes.
There's things like the source.
We've had some lingo, some
you developed
terminology that's unique to us.
That's right. But there's also terms and things that we've done that, like you say, we would probably look back at some of the stuff and really mentor ourselves heavily on, and of course that's the natural progression, and you get further down the line and further in the rabbit warren and you develop new skills and stuff like that. But, and I like this word because it's something that has been our superpower, that has gotten us to where we've gotten, but too much of it and not being aware that you're in it can also be an undoing. And that's the grind. And often we call up and say, hey, what's going on? Yeah, I'm in the grind, like there is periods where you've got to dive in and get it done. And we did a large, you go through those phases in life where you're getting skilled up, and to get skilled up, you have to immerse yourself in your craft. And we did that in so many different places, in so many different countries, alone. Just us two in the arena, working, from up to 30 head a day, stupid amount of horses in training, and, the word quantity over quality was actually probably our focus and a forced place to be in a lot of cases, because we were, eating dry bread and trying to make a living and get skilled up and get known. So being in the grind, and there's also something about the grind that is determination and will. Pardon the pun, will. But I remember, like back, there's also the grind, that part that we went through, and we really learnt some skills, and we were very willing to do hours in the arena that nobody else would have done. Like we often say, if you were to say to someone, like, this is what you have to do, in order to get good. Most people, I wouldn't sort of go back if that was an option again when I was 17, 18 and say like, for the next 25 years, this is what you got to do. I'd be thinking you're completely nuts. But I remember a time in Denmark too, and this is also something I really admire in you. We were there in the winter. I mean, you'd already gone pretty heavily into it in Australia, and that was the whip cracking.
Ah, yes.
And then I remember being in Denmark in winter. We were living together in a little farmhouse, and it was like we were Aussies, like weathering the cold, and you were getting into the double-handed. I remember you were working on Queensland crossover and wanting to get that,
Get that right.
And I remember a few times like being in the warm house looking out the window, and there you are like out there in the snow. You'd come in, you'd have
Australian in his natural environment in Denmark cracking whips. Yeah.
a few lacerations on the face, and I remember also very early on, with standing in Nanagoon in my driveway with the reflection of my gooseneck trailer, watching your form and trying to perfect it and get an idea and just master it, because that is what you wanted to do, and you were gonna, do it no matter what. So just go with that, like grind on a.
Well, it's an interesting point, because I think that through that process, and maybe I unconsciously learnt some of that from my parents, probably, to be fair, but I've always felt that if in doubt, I might have to grind things across the line. I may not be able to get there feeling the way I want, having everything run as well as you'd like. And in the end, if you're, as I think that, because we're talking about our survival part of our career, where you're trying to climb out of a situation that's pretty low level. You don't have money, you don't have big contacts. You're trying to, we were both trying to build up our reputations and survive and get better, and all that required excessive amounts of work to get there. And I think and I'm sure you would agree with this, what I'm grateful from that, looking back on it, is, and this is something for people at home, I think, to think about, is sometimes you're going to have to grind things across the line, because there is no other way. The other thing is, well, we just don't do it. And for me, that's always been too painful to deal with. Like, I can't, and I know you're the same with this, I can't get to a certain point and then just put so much effort and commitment and dedication and passion behind something and then just let it fall apart. Like, if I get to there, and it's also the weak side of me too, because I know sometimes I should stop and go, all right, could I make this easier? Could I make this work in an easier fashion? And sometimes I'll get into a mode where I'm like, I feel like I've just got to get this across the line, and I'll push to that point. But there's something about people in life being in a survival situation that I feel, to get out of survival, sometimes you've just got to do what you got to do to get past that point. And then when you're out of that survival situation, then you can reassess and recalibrate. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, but I think totally, that thing about, you're in a stage where, like you say, we didn't have a reputation, we didn't have a booming
cares.
business.
Like, no one's coming to say, hey,
no.
Would you like an opportunity here? We're interested in what you're doing. No one.
The last resource we did have was grind. And probably if we didn't have that, like you say, from our parents or somewhere influencing us to say, if you have to respect working hard to achieve something. And when you don't have anything else, because you're building up skills and all those things, that is the only thing you can do, because everybody can grind it out and say, I'm going to go hard. And that's just not going in and working mindlessly.
No, of course
thinking
not.
You're getting somewhere. Like, the grind can be going and researching what you need to do clever, but that's also work. Some people won't get off the chair and go, well, I don't know how to do it, so I'm going to do the work to find out how I can. So, but at the same time, I think we did a fair bit of grinding that, from the words of someone, we followed a bit Goggins with callousing your hands, callousing your mind. We, of course, approach things differently with water immersion and different, more sort of intelligent
one thing I'd
things.
like to add to that it's sort of, I feel is such a great quote is, I can't remember who it was where I heard it, but they're just saying, life is going to throw hard at you, whether you like it or not. Do you do the hard things and have a good life, or do you do the easy things and have a hard life? And so I think there's a lot of things where...
So good. I had never heard that.
You know what I mean? Like, well, you think about this, like, if there's something, and this is something that I think is very difficult to do, but really essential, is sometimes we know what we need to do. We know what we need to do. We don't feel like it. It's not the right time. We're not vibing with it. It just seems like just pure work. But then you also realize if you don't do it, it's still there. It's still waiting for you, and you've just burnt more time potentially. And sometimes doing certain hard things, I know in the past when we've had very complicated horses where we're preparing them to ride, and you know that the horse is deeply been traumatized in the past. They've got so much baggage, and you know that no matter how well you prepare them, you're going to run into a difficult potential situation, and there's no good time to do that. Right. And you've sometimes just got to do the hard things, and when you do those hard things, in that moment there might be a high level of discomfort, but then afterwards you might feel, oh, this horse has gained a lot more confidence now. I feel so much better because I've crossed that threshold where I was, the unknown territory. And for me now, particularly, I just realize like I've got to do routines that are good for me, that may be hard, so that my life is better. Otherwise, I'm just going to get flattened by everything that's going on. And that's a big change I've made in the last while, I think.
Yeah. I think it's also hard. A lot of the students that come and also connected to that vision bit. Like, I think a lot of people surrounded by instant gratification. I've often asked young people that have come, working students and things, and say, what do you value? Someone that works really hard and achieve something, or someone that's able to really do nothing and sort of wangle things and also be really brilliant. And it's surprising what they value. Like when we were young, again, going back into the days, we would value the working hard. So that was in our system, that we would, no matter what else, if we were in the grind, we were worthy and we were doing something worthwhile. And I think it's heavily connected to the vision. You get a lot of working students that come and they have a lot of talent and a lot of ability, and you think they could really be something.
Oh, for sure. There are that many people that have worked with me over the years where I've envied their talent. I've felt like this person, if I could ride like this, or if I had that feel at that age and that awareness at that age, you give that person 10 years, they could be the best on the planet.
Yeah,
I know
and not
exactly.
being aware of it, and not having the vision in the beginning, doesn't bring them to the grind, doesn't bring them to the next bit where they put in the work to actually develop themselves. And then, often we've both had students there for a little while, and then they think, I'm just not getting out of it what I planned to. But did you have a vision of what you wanted to get at? Did you know what you wanted to get out of it in the beginning?
Well, one thing that, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, what your version of this is. One thing that I've noticed that's been a blessing for me is I've gone about life in a way where I'm like, okay, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, and I'm willing to take whatever comes along the path to get there, because I've signed on I've said that's what I'm doing, that's what I want to do. And whatever hurdles come, I'm not going to look at all the hurdles and dread them coming. I'm not going to plan each hurdle and, which would be probably intelligent to sort of see each hurdle well before plan a solution for it. But for me, that'd overwhelm me. So I know what I want to do, where I'm going. I'm just going to take what comes and ride it out until I get where I want to go. And I always know that if my vision and goal is good enough, the price that I will have to pay will be okay. And sometimes you'll feel price is getting pretty high for what I'm doing. Like I don't know if there'd be anyone joining me at this moment. But then you realize it's also momentary. Like you can have a bad week, a bad month, a bad 6 months. It's not forever. But if you turn back and go and do something else, and then in the back of your mind, you're always knowing, I wonder if I had have actually done what I really wanted to do.
Great.
Yeah. Tell me your version of that, because you've been an inspiration to me in so many ways, but one thing that I think has given me a lot of confidence and was extremely helpful for me was you were blazing the trail. You were making these moves, moving to this country, initiating these ideas, breaking ground all the time. I felt like you were breaking ground. And I was able to see that and think, well, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. But if there was no one there, you had no one there breaking the ground for you. And I'm just curious how you had the confidence and the belief to do it, because there was no one showing you, hey, this is possible. Hey, this will actually work.
Yeah, I've thought about that also a lot. I've been asked that question quite a lot. And there's a lot of factors, of course, involved in that. You begin the vision, you get pot committed, like you say, you're not like saying, I'm going to go there, but I'm going to see what all the things are going to stand in my way and if I can overcome them. No, you have to see if you're going to overcome them when you arrive there. And, once you start to allow yourself to think that could be possible, I want to go there and maybe I want to do that. And we have students that come here now that also have made this trip from Australia and, they get here and think, wow, did I just commit to that? Like, I'm really here.
Yeah,
I'm in Europe and it's happening.
Yeah.
And I think taking that first step leads you into saying, I can take the next one.
So you felt that along your path, each step and that realization that, hey, okay, I can do this. Like, still to me, that's impressive, because I feel that a lot of people will take the step, but then you're in an environment where there's, I know it sounds a bit harsh, but no one cares whether you succeed or fail. There's no support network, and you're self-reliant.
Yeah.
There's no one going to give you a leg up. And I remember, particularly initially when I moved to Denmark and started living with you guys and everything, I did get that sense of, you feel very small when you've got no network. And when people are not, we had to sort of try and get people interested in what we're doing, because we had a bit of a different approach to most people. And so you're breaking ground everywhere, which is exciting and fun and challenging and interesting. But there is also the resistance to it, where some people they're not interested at all.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of an uphill.
No, absolutely. And I think another thing is that I never had a plan B. I never made it.
There you go. Now you've just given the secret. Now, if anyone's listening to this, burn the boats.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and I didn't come from a family, they gave me incredible support, emotionally, and they believed in me, and, always never, ever said, I could say the most outlandish thing to my mother. And my father would laugh, but he would never say, why would you do that?
See, that's that's beautiful parenting. Don't ever tell your kids that they can't do something. Like, at least if you're not going to say you can do it, at least don't say anything.
I felt sometimes they
discouraging.
were sitting back going, this is going to be a good movie. We're going to see him fall on his face or whatever, and calling them up when you're in Europe. And then after a while, Dad's like, oh, when are you coming home? Oh, you're going to be home. When are you coming back? When are you going to... Are you still riding those horses? When you... And then I remember the day I called him up and I'd said that I was moving to the Netherlands and from Denmark, and he said, oh yeah, and he's listening to everything. And at the end of the conversation, he said, yeah, you're not coming back, are you? And yeah, as I was saying, like, I didn't have the family that could give me the financial support, so I had no safety net. And I also felt that I was committing to something that I needed to follow through, because if I didn't believe in it, you know, I could tell my parents, but if I didn't believe in it, I couldn't call them up and say, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm going.
Let's just quickly touch on that burning the boats idea. Like, there's the old saying of, if people were invading an island years ago, the colonel of the army or the leader would burn the ship so there was no option of retreat, so that everyone had to come in, and basically they weren't leaving that island alive if they didn't win the battle, so to speak, and didn't conquer. And I think there's such relevance to that, because I think that being safe is an illusion. And this is something that I think is also another point that a lot of people don't always think about, because if you're safe doing what you don't want to do, you're not safe. That's not a safe life. That's being miserably in a position where you're feeling unsafe because you're not doing what you want to do, you're not enjoying your life. You might have some sense of security about some things, but it's not safety, and
it's a higher risk of unhappiness.
Yeah,
realizing
it's sort of
you
almost
didn't do what you wanted.
Exactly. You're almost like doubling down on, okay, I'm going to let my life be whatever it's going to be, and if it's sad, well, I'm signing up for that.
Yeah.
So I feel that I don't see the risk so much in what we've done, purely because I think that there is no alternative. And if there was, like, if we got severely injured and so on and so forth, you can always go back and work at a supermarket, or you can do something of any kind. The worst case scenario is always available. That's almost up for grabs straight away. So it's just hard, I think, for a lot of people to filter things through that lens, where they just realize, like, go for what you want to do, if that's what you really want, take what comes, and know that there is no turning back. There is, you can always move forward and pivot and change. It's not like, okay, I've locked into this, now I'm in prison for life. You can change, can't you?
Yeah.
At any moment. We've changed our direction many times, and
have a plan, because you can always alter it.
Yeah, but if you don't have a direction, where are you going? You're going to let the world dictate where you're going. And sometimes, if you're a very spiritual person, that can work, and you can operate in that space very well. But for most of us, that we can get lost pretty easy, I think.
But it's also the thing, having a plan B. There's something about when people say, I did this study because if this doesn't work out, it's like, it's something, the old saying, something to fall back on. It's like, if this doesn't work, you begin to fall, and you just fall and fall unless you have something. It's like, no, if this isn't working, most of the time you redirect. You don't fall or you have nothing. But even if it failed completely and you had nothing, you're not free. You
don't have nothing, because, and that's the other thing too, I think, like, I know that if you wanted to completely switch careers completely and go into a completely different field, you'd be ultimately very successful, because the skill set that you've developed on this journey is transferable across the board. And the education of life is where the real value is, isn't it? For sure.
And you can't take those skills away. If you have the plan and you don't have a plan B, you can't be ultimately super high focused on your plan A and your vision and what you want to do and go into the grind and make it successful if you are being distracted by you can't go full in with a plan B.
No.
It's Lucky we're not smart enough to have 2 plans at once.
That's right. Stick to the plan. That's right. That's right.
So the next little word is something that's sort of, people that know you well know that you have an incredible skill in this. And it's something that I also admire in you, is your analytical mind and how you can really find out what is the key thing that's important, or what is the thing that's really worth valuing or treasuring, or how to bring joy to yourself and to others. And it's why I like having conversations with you, because you have this skill of asking questions and asking the right questions and questioning everything, and being analytical, and what do you think of this, and what angle would you approach this, and that when we have conversations, you bring out the best in me, because you make me think about what I'm doing and what's the best way. And I also find myself that if I am in a conversation with someone that, one, you have the same sort of interest and the same energy, and you want to have life improvement, and you're a doer, but of course, you have an innate skill in that. And anyone that knows you knows that you will ask questions of them. Why?
Guilty with the questions.
But where do you think that comes from? Because that's not everybody, and I think a lot of people question things not enough.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And what do you think the right questions are for someone?
Great, that's a great question.
Like students that come in.
That's a great question.
They're not asking, or well,
yeah, that's a great, one of the best points I think you can make, because at least in my life, I don't, it's hard to say exactly where the question asking comes from. It's obviously a natural curiosity, but I feel that, and this is one of the things that I love and I'll just give a little bit of context. When I first met Tristan, we were on a fishing trip, and I just, with mutual friends, and people had told me, mutual friends had told me about Tristan, and he was a dressage rider. And at that time, I was a cowboy, and I just sort of felt, I don't know if I'll have much in common with this guy, get along with him. But they said, oh, he's a wizard. He's something special. And that clicked, and I was like, okay, I heard this several times, and you were just living just down the road. And when I cornered you on the boat and started asking you questions a bit, I was like, ooh, this guy's different. He's Mr. Miyagi different, and just wise and calculated and passionate and very well thought out and articulate and knowledgeable. And you were the first person that I really would say that I ever met that was showed me what a horseman's mind, or that seeker in you, that seeking wisdom, knowledge, and beyond what was commonly known. And that excited the hell out of me, because I was like, I know this guy might on the surface be in the dressage sport and I'm in the cutting sport, different disciplines, but what he's talking about is what I've been trying to look for and find. And
I was just thinking then, like, you looking at my notes, or like, I literally put that story as the next thing.
You want? He's like, oh no, he's done my story. He's ruined it.
No, but it's funny because I remember that. That's when we met.
Yes,
it was
yes.
Ian Fraser,
our great mate
friend.
Fraser. Cheers, Fraser. Yeah.
On that fishing trip, and I remember being on the boat, and it's funny you say cornered, because a few blokes have said, "Oh, geez, buddy, well, really corny. You got a good chat." But I remember coming out of that thinking, I've never met anyone that's like wants to know more about horses and life and his craft, and I'd never have anyone throw those sort of questions. And
be interesting to listen to those questions, but they're probably pretty basic now.
But it sparked something in my brain.
Yes,
immediately.
Yeah,
I think that was where we made the connection
Yes,
right away.
yes.
The first
thing,
moment.
100%. And I think what was special, and it has remained special till this day, is that I love asking questions, and you're someone who has very good answers and deep answers. And a lot of times I think people miss that about you, because you don't say, people would get different views of you because you might be producing content online or meeting you in a different situation. But I don't think people realize the deep pool of knowledge and wisdom and introspection you bring. But you don't just share that. You don't just go out and tell people about that. Someone has to ask that of you and sort of extract that out of you, kind of thing. And I think that's the chemistry has worked. But I must say, in theme with that, I think one of the strange things in both a mutual sort of mentor and good friend, Morton Thompson, has coined the famous phrase of people are not ready for the answer unless they've asked the question. And that's always frustrated me a huge amount, because I feel that in our lives, we don't get taught what are the right questions we should ask for ourselves, because wherever we're at, if our life, let's just say, is determined by the questions we ask, if we're asking the right questions, our life could potentially go wherever it could, wherever its potential could be. But if we don't ask any questions, or we don't ask the right questions, we may never get the answers to the things that we need. So getting back to your original question, I feel that let's just say in a person of a student position, I feel that you need to engage the mentor. You need to inspire the mentor to deliver their knowledge, deliver their wisdom, and get them thinking about it, and share the excitement of what they've got to say, so that it's this mutual upward spiraling situation. I think that was the greatest thing working with you. I'm 10 years younger than you, and I've been sort of following in your footsteps and been mentored by you a huge amount. And having that was just so pivotal in my career. And I can say that with 100% truth, I would not be where I stand right now if it wasn't for you in my life, 100%, because if you don't have that kind of mentorship, you're on your own. And some people on their own can do amazing things, but it's very hard on your own. And being able to ask your advice on many life things, how to handle certain situations with people, how to handle certain situations with horses. Like, if I didn't have that, I would be lost. And I remember when you bought your own place and moved out here, I was a bit afraid that you were going to go and do your own thing, and I was going to be left at the place we were at, because I was like, even though we were doing our own thing anyway, I've always felt that having that person just there in the arena that you could say, hey, what do you think about this, mate? I'm not sure what to do with this. Just meant so much to me over the years,
Yeah, and it's funny what you say about, I remember you telling me one time, like, we were talking about working students and people that had come, people that were working for you and people that were working for me, and we were sort of seeing the potential in them, but feeling that they're not asking those questions. They didn't have that hunger. And I remember you saying, like, if you're putting yourself in a gold pit, then you've got to be a gold miner.
Yes, that's such a great point. That's such a great quote.
If you make the move, especially the students that are coming from New Zealand, Australia, America, and spending the time with us, they've made huge sacrifices to leave their family. They've got maybe horses of their own that their family are looking after. They've got responsibilities that they're not used to having to organize from a distance. They've made a huge commitment to come and be away and change their life and their routine and their surrounding, and they're entering new water.
You need to be making hay while the sun shines when you're in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you put yourself in there and you're in a place where there is gold nuggets, you need to be the miner. You need to be digging and finding, and like you say, show value to your mentor. And also what we talked about last night, where you were saying, I would hire someone that sent a message and said, I will
will prove to you that I'll do anything to get to this position, kind of thing. Because there's an element of, and this is something that's, everyone has their own special gifts and talents and qualities, and and not everyone. We quite often talk in the context of, if you want to get, reach big goals, and that's that's a journey that not everyone is going to want to go on, and I understand that. But for sure, when you're in a situation like that, and I know sometimes people have taken me the wrong way sometimes, because they feel like, oh, he's just in it for the knowledge and this and that, and that's all it's about. But for me, it's always been that sort of thing, like when you're like, a lot of my greatest friends are my mentors, and that's not just a convenience thing. That's genuinely because, like yourself, Sam Watson, another good friend of mine, a lot of other people around have become great friends, because you're both on that same frequency, on that journey, sharing that thing. And I think, I know for myself, like, if I've got a really interested student that's just really passionate and everything, it just makes life worth living. But if you feel like you're getting your tank drained every time you help someone, you're giving, and they're not sort of showing the enthusiasm or the interest, it can be hard.
All one-sided.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't blame people for being like that. I get that. But I think we're not taught to show huge gratitude to people enough for their knowledge or their wisdom, and I think we can easily skip that.
Yeah. I must have my Yoda powers on, because we've gone straight into, naturally progressed into the next topic.
There you go.
Which was mentors. And of course, we've been lucky, both of us in our lives, to have great mentors along the way. Not everybody's in that position. Everybody comes from different backgrounds, and for our family, for one, have been great mentors for us, and continue to be. My grandfather, and I think that influence in the beginning sort of helps you attract people that are going to be able to mentor you in the right way. But not everybody, of course, is for, they may go so far from, their home and endeavoring into places where they don't know anybody, and they're learning the skills, and they, want to start really from scratch, and they have to find people. And I sort of feel a lot in the horse world that there's a lot of, we say it a lot too, the fruit pickers, sort of people going to this trainer, and then to this trainer, and to this trainer. And it's kind of the culture now, because we look at so much internet, and we're trying to feed ourselves from lots of different streams of information. And then we're not really going into picking a mentor and learning his program from start to finish, even though some parts don't feel that great. There's a lot of investment of time, and a lot of people picking mentors because they're winning a lot of medals, or they've had success with other students. And I just want to talk about that a bit, like encompassing that whole thing, like, I think mentors, choosing one, what is important, and how to, really sort of stop all the all the stuff that's coming in, and not being that fruit picker. I talk often about growing your own tree, growing your own roots.
It's a great analogy.
Because if you're picking fruit and you end up with a basket of all sort of stuff mixed up, in a week it's rotten, and So what sort of your...
Yeah, well, I think you touch on some extremely important points, and my experience has been the people who I wanted to be my mentors, in terms of my intention was go out and like, this person I want to be my mentor, none of those people ended up being my mentors. It's always been the people that didn't turn out to be it's not that it wasn't like a second pick type thing. It was more just you just realize, hang on, this works, and I'm going to develop so much in this situation, and I enjoy the interaction and everything, and it just sort of flows like that. And I think that's one part. But I think and this is the sad thing about life sometimes, is what we need to learn, sometimes the lessons come too late. And it can be that our precious, say, 20s, teenage years can be burnt up chasing, changing, switching, swapping. And I've done that. You've done that a little bit. Everyone does that.
Yeah.
But then when you come across someone who's good, you've got to settle in, because and this is, I'll just share a little bit my story with you as an example. When I met you, I remember when we worked together for a bit in Australia, I remember thinking, I wish this guy was into cutting horses, because that was what I was doing at the time, because then I would want to work with him, because I can just feel this works really well. And then when I decided to stop the cutting sport and take the jump and go to Europe and work with you, I immediately felt, even though I basically, my career plan that I'd lined out forever, I just stopped and moved. I mean, it's still horses, but it's a different thing.
Rogers being in the Will Rogers Coliseum.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. But what I've learned from, say, you being my mentor for many years was that you complimented me and balanced me out, because I have a little bit of a tendency of being more intense, and I was more impatient when I was younger particularly, and you smoothed all that, because you're very frictionless person. When you're working with horses, everything's very smooth and wise and much more than me, and you calmed me down, slowed me down, made me think more, and built a foundation in me and of awareness, understanding, and so on. And so that just got me up and going. And then, like, with my wife as another mentor with the dressage, she's helped me in so many other areas, details, refinement, discipline, precision, understanding, so on, as terms of another example. And then, like, with Sam Watson, my mentor with Liberty horses, same thing. You know, he's just become a great friend, and he's changed my life in so many ways with his knowledge and friendship and so on. And each mentor was not a planned intention, but it's worked out. And what I realized, I think, with it is your mentor, and this is probably something that's I now know but wouldn't have known at all before, is that just because you work with someone doesn't mean you're going to be them, doesn't mean that you're going to end up actually looking like them or training exactly like them. There'll be definitely threads, there'll be a lot of influence, but you are you in the end, and whatever you bring, your magic will come through in the end. But the wisdom of the people you learn from and meet along the way ultimately defines the quality of your work. So I feel, for me, the quality of my work is down to those. There are a lot more other influences. There are so many people that I could. There's so many people who've helped me, and there's too many people to name. But as far as the most amount of time, you know, it's you, my wife, Sam, being the biggest influences, and I feel like my structure is made from that. And if I didn't have that structure, I'm an empty vessel. Yeah. You know, I'm just sailing around, trying to wing it, not knowing really what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing underneath me, sort of thing.
It's interesting, those points about, like you say, like planning. Like, I know when you went to America, you went to a guy that's won everything.
Yeah.
And
he's the best to ever do it. He's your hero. But the click, it's not, it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
He wasn't in a place that he was interested in mentoring me, and there just was, you know, and no blaming him, not at all, but also it wasn't, probably the chemistry wouldn't have been there either.
Yeah.
So
and that's such an important thing, what you say. Like, and falling across and finding a mentor that ends up working, like you say, with us in the beginning. I wasn't in the same discipline, in the same game as you, but both our relationship truly, it innately fits us.
Yes.
Like you say,
with the essence of it is
with the
there.
balance, and just like, you know, I'm grateful, you know, that you cherish those things.
Oh, for sure.
About how we've worked with horses, and that we were allowed to be ourselves, you know, and we balance that. You know, and I am, a pretty sort of, maybe like you say, calm, relaxed person, but the other way as well, you know, like you put so much structure and thought, and you know, it's why you're so brilliant in what you're doing now, and why I envy it so much is you know, and the discipline from being out there learning the Queensland crossover. Like that was never, I was always going in and, you know, used to always make jokes that my horses were pony clubbed because they'd be, you know, nibbling and a bit pushing, and for me, I was sort of going around and I had less structure, but I envied you. You know, I remember you starting with Beauty, the first Liberty horse, and what you were able to achieve in such a short time, and the communication and the language you had, and, you know, that you were able to have that clear structure and really create something. And I guess you envy in others what you don't have in yourself.
And that's exactly it, because, like, and this is something that to throw that back at you, like, I've always noticed there have been so many situations where you frictionlessly work through situations where I'm going to run into trouble. I'm going to run into something being difficult. And you assess and feel the situation. And you have, probably out of anyone on planet Earth that I know of, you have the highest gift of getting a horse with you along the journey, and the next minute that horse is just with you, and in your own way, in that special sort of seamless way. And I don't have that, and I know I don't have that, and I'd like that more. And I think we should trade more, because there's a lot of things now.
Well, I think there's an element of, but that's the thing about the mentorship student thing, was like you say, like you have a mentor, but it really works when it's both ways. And like you say, you're best friends. I'm also the same. I'm still best friends with Morton. I'm still, and also my newer mentors, you know, away from the horse game. I'm visiting, you know, just to have a cup of tea with them, and you know, they're teaching me a lot about myself, and you enjoy the time. You can connect on a level that is much deeper than just wanting to learn a certain skill. That's right. I think that's super important.
That's right. And it's, at least for me, it's the juice of life for me, almost. Like the relationship I've had with you and with my other mentors and other special people along the path is really enriched. That's for me my most precious sort of stuff. And I think being as busy as we all are in our lives, that's the thing that I get most sad about. Like, we're sitting down here and we're having this great conversation, and we do have a lot of conversation on the phone, but we hardly get to see each other much. And yeah, that's a shame, because, you know, life goes on and time flies by. But you're absolutely right about, like, with your mentors. Like, there was a guy when I started out, Phil Webb, when I was a teenager, and he was the first guy to take me under his wing and give me opportunities, and he enjoyed having me around because I was enthusiastic and keen, and I didn't know anything, and half the time I was probably doing a whole lot of stuff he didn't want me to do, you know. But that meant so much to me in that time, and I'm really grateful for that, because I've had other experiences where you can really feel like people don't care about you at all. And like you say, every mentor you have, it's a precious relationship, even if you don't even have much to do with each other in a work sense or a business sense or working with horses sense. Later on, the friendship and the rapport and the common ground is precious. Yeah,
absolutely. So, mate, the next little space we're going to delve into it's not really a word, it's more a phrase. But I want to go into this journey where you are now, like the gifts of the Liberty journey, because of course for me that's also a very mysterious place because I've not been there.
Yeah, we haven't delved into it enough yet.
Exactly, and there's very few people actually on the planet that, I mean, you've got 10 horses at Liberty and making some unbelievable, like when you sent me the clip of what you did in Switzerland, that movie, going to the most remote, beautiful places on the planet with your horses that you've spent time developing as a family, you know, and being able to perform these amazing things on such a level in an amazing place, like the combination of all those things. And when you sent me the film that you'd made, I mean, I don't know how many people I sent it to just to see their reaction, because of course I had such a reaction to it. And of course I know you well, and I know your journey, so it was all the more powerful for me, you know. And we had not had as much connection or meeting each other as often as we were, so I was aware, and I'd been and helped you with one filming, and
that's right, that was great.
When Sam was there, and we did a great little filming in Germany there. But tell me first, actually, I want people to hear the story, and I want you to go full in with this Switzerland trip, like when you made that, and then we'll go into more things about the horses and developing that in your journey there. But I just think that's also, there's so much gold in what you went through to do that, like from the beginning to the end, and there's so many roadblocks in just that, executing what you did there. There's so many roadblocks that most humans would have given up 100 times, and yet you were able to pull it off and go through it, and it shows in the content. And I think, and I want to share that video again with people, because when they hear the story of what went into making that, you know, you see something on social, and you know, there's a lot of stuff we're taking in these days, and it is incredibly beautiful, and the connection and what you're doing and the place you're doing it in, people are affected by. But I think if people hear the story of what you had to go through to do that, it just takes it, people should experience that.
I mean, it's a difficult one, because there's so many elements in that trip and so on, and this comes a little bit to the grinding over the line where we started out with things, because I had this vision of creating this film to inspire the beauty of horses and what can be possible with horses, because I feel that I to be really straight with you, I feel like I'm only scratching the surface. I'm only a beginner in this, even though on the surface it might seem, oh wow, he must have everything figured out. I feel this is a long journey, and I'm only fumbling my way through it, sort of thing. But I had this vision. I was like, my favorite place in the world to visit is these Swiss Alps and these locations, and I was like, if I could film this in these locations with the horses for my foundation, it's just going to capture people's hearts. It's going to take them to a place that they're feeling what I would like them to feel. And sort of the artist side of me is wanting to create a feeling. And so first of all, I mean, we don't need to go through everything, but every hurdle, like, to get the filming of the locations, these are super exclusive locations where you think no one's going to let some guy with his horses go to these places. Who's going to give you permission? Switzerland's a very protected country, and you know, I was very fortunate to meet a Swiss horseman gentleman who helped me with everything. I did 2 trips to scout locations and to see if we could get permission. And when I started out this idea, I wanted to create the best short film sort of thing that I could create. And I was just like, I had it in my mind, and there was nothing that was going to stop me from creating this. It was almost like, I've got this opportunity, I've got people supporting me with finances to create it. Limited enough finances, but enough. And when, in the preparation to get the horses down there, all the carnets and all the border crossings and all the headaches, and like we had to stable the horses 2.5 hours away from most of the locations in the mountains because I had 6 horses with me, and I had to have a place where I could work with the horses, have them comfortable, and then drive to the locations. And I had a lot of people helping me, and I must apologize to most of the people helping me because it was so committed to doing this, and it was so tough. We were getting up. Some of the shots we were getting up at 2 a.m, getting all the horses ready, warming them up at home, getting them ready, then driving to these remote locations, and quite challenging. The grass is slippery and wet, and the just endless.
So many elements.
Endless challenges with it. And
well, even just to drive 6 horses into the mountains, I mean, you can't just get a huge truck and be trekking up. I imagine you were having...
We had small trucks and...
trailers.
We had 3 small trucks actually, because the trailers were maybe a bit tricky in some places. But also... the weather was the big disaster. We wanted to plan to shoot over a week, film in these locations, and we only had a weather window of 2 days, if we were lucky. And I'd spent the whole year preparing for this, training the horses, doing all the work, and I was just going to be heartbroken if we didn't capture it. Because I feel one of the things that I love about film is that you're capturing a moment in time that will never exist again. And if something happens to your horse, or happens to you, or happens to something, you never have another shot at it. It's only one shot. And so
it's the ultimate record or biography of a life, isn't it?
Exactly. And so it's sort of, I'm going into it. And the other thing was too, I felt that I made this project so important because I was like, this is launching this foundation, and this has to be exceptional. Like I'm not leaving until it's exceptional. And before we got down there, it was snowing, and we got down to Switzerland, there was snow everywhere. There was no grass, no nothing. And the weather forecast was saying that the snow would melt and we'd maybe have a window of 2 days to film. And we had 3 locations, very spread out, very unique locations, a bit hard to access as well. And we managed to pull it off. But
you've got videographers, like photographers, you've got crew with the horses, you've got like your grooms, it's...
Yeah, well, having all the horses washed and prepared and all the people helping around, it's hard work, but it's sort of something that as I do this more, I just want to keep getting better and better at it. But it's
What was there a moment where, because people talk about like preparing their horses, and of course creating a team of Liberty horses is much more involved, and you have less safety nets. And of course you can train at home in the arena or outside or in the field. Was there a moment where you like stepped in and you had your horses free in the mountains, and 50 meters behind them was a drop of
1,000 meters?
1,000 meters. Like, was there a moment there where you first went free and thought, I just hope I can do what I do on a daily basis, and that this, because there is no safety net. There is no bloody...
Well, to give you a little bit of an idea, one of the scenes up on top of a mountain, when we got there, we unloaded the horses, and of course, this is a very different landscape, and these horses are not that old in this time, so some of them, it's like they haven't been away from home much, if ever. And so, no, they've been away from home once for a filming trip, and that was the one you came with in Germany. And so we unloaded them, and then a herd of Swiss cows came down with bells galloping down the hill towards us, and the horses, like Darling, my biggest mare, she's just got into, of course she was like unsure, where are we, what's going on. It was a bit of a rough trip up the mountain to get there for her and so on. And she's big and it's a bit hard for her to balance. So it wasn't that easy anyway. And then when we get up there, this herd of cows come galloping down with their bells and just rattled the horses, because of course we live in the countryside, but we don't have cattle all around us where we are. So cows with
some
bells.
of them would have been seeing cows for the first time, and then the noise of the bell,
and it was
already
just
in the environment,
stampeding down the hill. And she's 180 centimeters plus, and she's like a wild elephant, a wild giraffe on the end of the rope for a moment, and then you've sort of got to go, okay, now we've got to go to this location and then capture these difficult movements where the horse have to be really concentrated and focused and so on. And then that you've got a big drop off where if a horse was to run down there, it would be a bad deal. And we always try and prepare better and better. And I made a lot of mistakes on that trip as well. But each time I slowly learned to get better. But I think probably one of my scariest moments was Spot had a bit of a nervous moment, and he took Esmeralda with him and just went for a run across the top of the mountain, maybe 100 meters, 200 meters, and then turned around and came back. And I was just thinking, if he decided to, come back. If he decides to go for a run
turn
the wrong way and not come back, I don't know what we're going to do here. But the one thing that I have learned with the Liberty stuff is that horses are far smarter than we give credit for. You will have some horses that have, say, tip into instinctive thinking and can make very poor decisions, but quite, like I would say, majority of the horses in my team have the ability to find their way back in difficult circumstances. And of course we practice that quite a bit at home, because it's not safe. Like, I'm not going out there hoping they're not all going to run away. I know that they're not all going to run away, but you might have one lose their confidence occasionally.
Yeah. No, well, I tip my hat to you. I mean, we've been ourselves in some pretty high pressure cooker type situations and scenarios, but I mean, when you're up there on the mountain with, a team of Liberty horses free, and something like that happens, like you can't just go up there and go, I do a little bit of Liberty and
no.
Like
it's super dangerous. It's super dangerous. Like, and that's where, like, the funny thing is the most difficult thing in the film trips I've done so far, and particularly the Swiss Alps, is that the grass in the Swiss Alps is like Swiss chocolate for the horses. And so when you're trying to do difficult maneuvers with multiple horses, there's always three that are trying to eat at different times, and you're like, can we just get this one time?
They're like singing, the hills are alive with the greatest grass ever.
Exactly. So that, like, I find the elements of nature working out free, it's interesting, the challenges you face and so on, but it's also something where, and this is something I wanted to maybe talk about briefly, is I feel that I think you'd agree with this, in life, in horse training, a lot of life is I mean, I wish I could look at life through the lens of, like, every moment's a magic moment, and live in that sort of mystical sort of awe of life and that sort of thing. But I feel that quite often,
be the fly on the wall in your own journey.
Quite often I feel that there's a lot of work to the magic. It's not like the magic is not, you can have magic in any moment if you choose to go that way, but sometimes to reach, like, what I consider the magic, where the horse is really connected and just with you completely, and you're out in a remote space, and it's just like there's no safety, really there's nothing, and they're just really there. That is precious and magic, but to get there, it's not magic. There are magic moments along the way, but most of it is you have to do the things that you need to do. And I think it's the same with our own lives. we can have magic moments in our lives, but sometimes we have to do the other stuff, the work, the preparation, like with this podcast, we had to make sure everything was set up and get our thoughts together and so on. And then the magic can happen, but you can't just roll up unorganized and then it just happens.
Yeah. What was your thoughts after you saw it? Like you've been through all that, and then of course there's not only the capturing of it, but there's the post, there's the editing. You've got to work with the guys that are producing it, and the whole process that comes with filmmaking. It's a craft. People spend their whole life just on that alone, and we're horse trainers also trying to do that. How is it like when you watch it back now, having gone through all that? Are you proud of it?
That's first of all, I'd just love to give a shout out to you, Len Alorza, the Spanish filmmaker who worked with me on that. He did an amazing job to shoot all what he did, and also with the editing, we very much went back and forth a lot. I had a vision of what I wanted to create, and as a filmmaker, he had a vision, and then we ended up making, I think, the best thing we could make from that, and I'm grateful for him. But to answer that question, like, it's probably something for me that as a piece of work, it's maybe the only piece of work, not the only, but one of the only pieces of work that I feel that I'm going to be proud of that for the rest of my life, because I set out to do what I wanted to do, and every detail we tried to, refine it down, and that for me is an addiction to me to create great work, and great work is very hard to do.
Absolutely.
I am. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go further also into the journey of, creating a Liberty team, because I think I can only imagine that it's very different from developing a single horse, or, on that aspect of developing a dressage horse from the beginning, starting him all the way to Grand Prix. We've both been on very personal journeys with horses that, we consider them to be our best friends, and they've gone the extra mile for us, and we feel that they've got so much wisdom from the journey they've taken with us, and we've done clinics and demos and shows and performances in all the biggest arenas in the world. And, I know the level of that appreciation I have with those horses that I've done that with, and also the connection and the kind of relationship I have with the horse that I trust, and I have been through a lot of things with, and I've seen them grow and develop themselves, and I've done that also through them.
For sure.
But tell me a little bit, like, is there some big differences between now that you've got, a large Liberty team, and you've been through that process, and you've done some amazing things, and you're continuing, in this filmmaking career, and, to build that, of course, is already like, it would be a huge lifetime achievement for people to be able to learn to do that in one case, but to build the team successfully and all the things that come with that, keeping them healthy and the things that you have working with one horse is already, but there are some things there that really shifted how you think about working with horses, or you have a different appreciation?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And what I would say, first of all, with Liberty, and what I appreciate so much from it that I've learned, and I think where anyone, doesn't matter who it is, can get huge value from it, is, it's based around obviously that connection of having the horse's mind connected with you. So first, you've obviously got to be connected with them to teach them and train them, but then you're teaching them to be connected with you. And on that level of needing sort of a certain level of connection all the time, it just deepens the relationship with each horse, and also the horse becomes something else. They become like, with my younger horses in the team that I've maybe done a better job with because I knew more when I started with them, I feel with them, they're so pure, they're so, they're just there for you. They know what to do. They haven't been through too many mistakes, and they're so on point with, especially there's a couple like Sky and Steel, two horses. They're very much like that. And with my older horses, they're so experienced, so intelligent, so wise with some things, and it's just changed the way I work with horses completely, because I feel I don't want to have shallow interactions with horses where, like, for example, so much anymore. I don't want to have a horse for a little while, train it for a little while, and then send it back to the owner so much. I want to try and build something over time, and like when a horse reaches a point where they have a lot of knowledge and experience, you don't start with a normal horse anymore. You're starting with, it's hard to explain, but it's like a well-educated person. You're starting at a different point. You wake up like that. You start there. You don't start at the beginning and go through all the challenges a bit. And I think, like, my aim with it is to try and get towards all the work being on that level where the horse is connected with you all the time, and then you're suggesting what you want, what you'd like to do, and that the horse is picking up that responsibility. And as far as with the team sense, what that's taught me so much is how powerful energy is and intention is across a herd, and how, like, if you have three, or say for example 3 or 4 horses a bit frustrated or a bit upset or fresh, that can affect the whole herd. And if your energy is affected by them, then your energy can affect all the others that might be confident in doing their job, and vice versa. If you keep your energy perfectly calm and in the right place, you can manage difficult situations and then help everything come back into order again. And just knowing, like, how, like, for example, all the horses I can speak to individually, and they know their names and all the different voice cues, and how I speak to one can affect another. If I'm too harsh or too strict, another horse might get concerned by that. If I'm too soft, the other horse might not take me seriously enough. And there's all this stuff that, like, I'm only at the beginning with this, I feel, but there's so much within that that sort of, it has changed me hugely. And I feel that in the beginning, for me, my mind was just racing, because it's like, that horse, this horse, that, what's the name? I've got to use my body, my energy, command different things, and I'd be flustered, and my energy would get high, and it would affect the herd. And you have to sort of have enough, after a while, experience and calm to realize, okay, this is happening. These are the things I need to focus on now, and then I focus on those things. And I must say, with my mentor, Sam Watson, with that, without him, I wouldn't be at all where I am. Like, he is 100% responsible for what I'm doing, because I would say I've been the good student in that way. I've gone to him, I've sacrificed, I've dedicated, I've paid, I've done everything I can do, but he has also been there for me. And I know there are a lot of times where he would have been helping me, where he's thinking, oh, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of teaching this guy. And because I might have been struggling with something, getting frustrated or feeling, oh, this doesn't feel right, and challenging him on it. And he stayed there, he worked through it with me. And I realized the wisdom in his message more and more. And that sort of helped me so much. So it's, yeah, that would be my answer to that. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's funny that you say, like, you're just in the beginnings of it, because it's to a lot of people, you know, they can't even imagine where to begin, or what the complexity is, and what the degree of difficulty is to do what you're doing and what you've developed. But it is also, just proves again, and it lets me feel that you know, the life with horses is all the things you're talking about is learning about ourselves, isn't it? I mean, talking about energy and the connection and an awareness of how you affect the space in which you're standing in with other living things that are also affecting each other by the repercussion of how you're presenting yourself to them. And it's for me, it sort of lets you feel that we will never get bored in our craft.
No.
Like,
and if you're getting, and I think the issue is you can get bored, and that's because you're living in your own world too long. Like, and I get like that sometimes, where I'm sort of playing my own tape of life in my head or with what I'm doing. And if you really, like, if someone was to just come in and say, hey, are you not noticing this, this, and this? And all of a sudden you're in a deep, you're in a deep place all of a sudden where everything's fresh and alive and every detail's new, or same thing you're looking at, but just someone's just coming with a different perspective, you know?
Yeah. But so many beautiful elements of relationship and connection. And of course, they're sort of common words that come with what people want to hear with horses at the moment. But on a deep level, it is really there. Well, you know, like when you talked about being in the mountains and you know, your two horses running away, it's like everyone says, oh, my horse is my friend. But when you hear what you go through to build a team, I mean, they're like your children, you know? And all the things, like when you're talking about those interactions and talking to one in a certain way, and that can affect another. I've got two young girls. It's also exactly the same like that. Like you can be saying, you get a bit hard on one because she's doing something naughty, and the other one is like also feeling, oh, he's, hang on a minute, maybe I'm also, you know, so you've always got to be aware.
Well, and one thing I would just also like to add to all that is that I feel that it's easy for people to get a perception of us like, oh, these guys, they're special. They got something going on. They're not your normal person. They've got special talents and this and that. And yeah, it's easy for them to say, you know, I'm not like them, you know. I want to stress this point, and I think you'd agree with me with this, is like, we might have gifts, that might be true, but they're no stronger than anyone else's gifts. And how they started, you know, I really feel that I'm a very normal person who has evolved into a better person, and I want to continue to do that. And I feel that everyone has significant gifts and talents within them. They might not be aware of it. People might not tell them about it, but they're there and they will shine through. Like, I noticed that with anyone I've worked with, there are certain things, and I don't always maybe say this enough to people who work with me. I see things in them, I think, wow, if they keep going with this, they're going to make me look silly when they're done, you know? But you have to go through it. You have to see it through. Like, you're not going to get there if you don't keep going and keep going. And that's something that I feel very passionate about, is that this is obtainable. Everything is obtainable if you're willing to go to the lengths to get it. That's, you know, we are not far superior beings by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, we might be lacking in talent to start with. But what you do with it is where it all changes, kind of thing.
Such a solid point. I mean, there's plenty of situations I can recall that if someone looked back and saw us, they would see we're pretty normal.
Exactly.
And if you know, go back and see the journey we've come along the way, you know, if we also talked about this last night, you know, over dinner, if we went back, you know, 20 odd years and we saw ourselves working horses, you know, we would also be.
Yeah, I wouldn't let my younger self near any of my horses now. You know what I mean? That's the truth of it. Because I didn't know what I was doing and I was blind to it. You know? And
everyone has a starting point. And like you say, everybody has the possibility of a gift, and that's So where is it, mate? This is our regular question we ask ourselves. Where are you taking it? Where are we going? Where was your next? What do you see yourself doing now with this amazing. I mean, you're producing some amazing inspirational footage for people, and
I appreciate
and you've built something that is, you can be incredibly, anyone on the planet should be incredibly proud of the journey.
Thank you.
So where are you heading with this?
Well, I feel that I'm sort of doing two things. One is helping educate people, giving people insight into the things I've learned in my life, and that's my contribution to people in the respects of what I've learned, and trying to give that. So that's one thing coming up. The other thing on a personal level is I've just kind of gotten this sense of I want to create the most beautiful things with horses I can create in nature, moments, feelings, because we talked about this before. We both sort of said that if we could be an amazing musician that could touch people in that through music, that'd almost be a preferred choice,
we could switch professions.
Yeah, we could switch. And I feel a bit the same way, but I also feel that in this day and age, like creating these moments and creating these scenes and this feeling through what I'm doing is my art. And also on a more beautiful level, like sometimes a painter can create just a masterpiece, but they are in a room painting that painting. I'm out and the backdrop is a real life scene, and the horse is a real life animal, and the magic is happening in that moment, then and there, and there will never be that same thing happen again. So you're creating pieces of art that are a one-off, one of a kind, and sometimes they may not always be great, but the ones that are, and so that's kind of what I'm looking to do, and sort of create beautiful content, inspire people with horses. Yeah.
In life, create art.
Yes, that's right. If in doubt, create good art. Yeah.
Well, we could talk, I mean, like we did for another 4 hours last night. But,
That's right.
I'm just, again, I want to say I'm just grateful to, like we spoke about, recording this conversation is like a recording of,
of a piece of art.
And a period of our lives. And I think it's also just a great, probably 10 years ago we could have also had a great conversation.
Yes.
But I think we are both in a position in our lives where we are growing to a point where we can really appreciate what each other has done, and I hope that we can, continue to share these ideas and get better at being together a bit more, and joining each other on different journeys and things like this. So thanks very much, mate, for being here, and hopefully you'll come again.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to do it again. And I just like to say once again, just thank you so much, because I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for you. Like, it's just as simple as that. Like, when I look at my timeline in my life, if I didn't meet you, I'm not standing here today. So it's an honor to be the first guest to the podcast.
Cheers, brother. So people, follow this man, Will Rogers. You don't need to know anything but his name. You go onto any social media platform, follow what he's doing, be inspired by his journey. Do the same if you feel like following TRT, and don't forget, we have a stream of podcasts you might have missed. So see you next time.